Hello, and welcome back to another episode on the Holistic Health and Weight Loss Podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. I hope you are having a fantastic week so far. It is finally starting to warm up here. We're a couple weeks ahead before this podcast episode will actually be published, where it's April 6th right now, and things are finally starting to warm up, but the snow is starting to melt. I hope the same is happening where you are, or maybe it's already bright and sunny and hot out where you are. Even better. So today I have invited Annika Carroll on to my podcast to talk about all things sleep. I am so excited for you to listen to all of her knowledgeable information, tips, and tricks when it comes to sleep. She is super knowledgeable. She knows what she's talking about. And yeah, I hope that you take something away that can help you get better sleep. So Annika Carroll is the new CEO of Sleep Like a Boss, an international network of sleep coaches who help insomniacs get their sleep back. She knows firsthand how sleep issues can impact one's health, relationships, and life overall. Annika suffered from 2 burnouts and severe sleep issues and anxiety in the past. She quit her 15-year career as a human resources manager in the corporate world to become a sleep and health coach. She is the founder of the Sleep Mastery Method. Today, Annika helps ambitious women figure out what is stopping them from getting the sleep they need and supports them on their way to changing this. Okay, enjoy this episode. You're going to learn so much about sleep. Annika, thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with you telling us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Annika Carroll. I'm a sleep science coach and a nutritionist, and I am the founder of the Sleep Mastery Method and the CEO of Sleep Like a Boss, which is a network of sleep coaches that is international and where we help people who can't sleep get their sleep back.
Mm-hmm. Amazing, amazing. And so have you struggled with your sleep? Do you have your own story you could tell us about?
I do. I was actually, when I was younger, I'm 41 now, when I was like in my teens, 20s, even early 30s, I always slept like a rock. I had no problem sleeping. And I've always needed a lot of sleep. And after I've had my son, who was burned super early, he was super premature, and it was all very traumatic. I started having sleep issues, and they were not necessarily just related to like breastfeeding at night or things like that, but it was really the trauma. And I went through 2 burnouts, and always when I was burned out, I couldn't sleep, and I was exhausted, and I just could never sleep. And I started developing this sleep anxiety when you go to bed and you're like, oh my God, if it's going to be another bad night, I'm not going to make it. This is just not good, which is A, not true, and B, yeah, you'll survive. But that was kind of then when I started to go into nutrition, and I saw how food can heal the body, and that already helped me a little, but there were still underlying things that I eventually figured out with a practitioner after years of seeing multiple people. And and it's really become my passion, and I see so many people who struggle with it, and I really want to help them, and it's just become, I guess, my purpose.
Amazing, amazing. A lot of my audience is interested in like weight loss goals. Let's talk about the importance of sleep and health in your weight loss goals.
Oh yeah, I think if you we can discuss it a bit scientifically if you want. So if we want to lose weight, I think sleep is fundamental. Sleep is fundamental for health for anybody. Mm-hmm. So no matter whether you want to lose weight or not, you need to sleep a good amount. Mm-hmm. It impacts so much in our systems, right? It's like when we rejuvenate, when we detox, when we do like mental reconciliation of emotions and everything. So we really need to sleep. And for weight loss, it's specifically important because you might have heard this, or you might have had that own experience. If you have a night of bad sleep, like let's say you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours, what happens the next day? Are you going to make good healthy choices with regards to what you're eating, what you're drinking? No, you're not. You're likely going to go to the fridge and you're going to grab the donut, you're going to grab the chocolate bar, you're not going for the apple, you're not going for the banana, you're not going for the salad. Mm-hmm. And that is not a guilt trip that we need to go on. That just happens because the body needs energy. And where do we get quick energy from? carbs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more
Sugar.
processed sugar, the better is what the brain thinks, right? And is that helping with weight loss? No. So if you can keep your energy to be recuperating overnight, so you get a good night's sleep, you keep your blood sugar stable. And I know you talk about these things too on Instagram. I follow you. This is so important. So the less sleep we have, the more calories we tend to consume. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you look at how sleep works, there's multiple factors, but if we look at it quite simply, there's two hormones in the body that dictate how we sleep, and that's cortisol and melatonin. And cortisol is our stress hormone, and melatonin is what we call our sleep hormone. And cortisol is supposed to be high in the morning and then go down in the afternoon, and we get a little tired. We might have that afternoon slump a little, and then melatonin slowly kicks in and makes us sleepy at night, and then melatonin goes down in the morning and cortisol comes back up. And cortisol is always released when we're under stress. So if we don't sleep, we already have pretty high levels of cortisol because our body is trying to give us energy through that. That's what it's doing. It's pumping out cortisol for energy. It's also starting to store energy that comes in through food, mostly around the midsection. This is kind of what I kind of like to lovingly call cortisol tire. Because that just happens. Our body thinks, oh my, if you're not sleeping tomorrow again, we need more energy. So I'm going to store everything and I'm going to slow down my metabolism because this is just, I can't pump this cortisol all the time. I need a reserve. So I'm just going to put it there. And that is something we don't want at all, right? And another reason that cortisol might be high and then interfere with weight loss is if we don't sleep and we do have potentially inflammation in the body, which can come from stress, so gut issues. If we have chronic inflammation, the body releases cortisol because cortisol is also an anti-inflammatory, not just a stress hormone, to fight that inflammation. And then we can't sleep, but also this inflammation causes weight gain in the body. And the more we sleep, the lower our cortisol levels overall, the lower the inflammation, and the better we can lose weight or just use our energy efficiently. Let's say it like that we don't store it in places where we don't want it, right? Even though we might be eating better already. If we have a healthy cortisol melatonin level in the body, that really, really helps with maintaining a healthy weight.
It's interesting because you said, and I love the topic of inflammation, but but you said like that cortisol stress can cause inflammation, but inflammation can also cause cortisol to happen in your body. And then like, it's like just the cycle, right? That just repeats. And it's just, yeah. So what's your best advice for combating that and for getting better sleep and reducing stress and really, improving these aspects?
I think if we're looking at, to feel overall better and get a better sleep, I think the most important thing to understand, personally, I find, is that your bedtime routine starts in the morning. If you, and that might sound a little weird, but that hour before you try to go to bed, where you hear things like take a bath, journal, put blue blockers on, turn the lights down, that's all valid. That is all valid because we need to kind of get quiet and calm in order to feel safe, because that is the only way our body can sleep, if we feel relaxed and safe. However, if we go all day and don't nourish ourselves well and stress to the max, that can't happen. Like that Epsom salt bath at night will not cut it. Right. So, and what we basically need to do is we need to get a healthy sleep-wake cycle. And you might have heard the term circadian rhythm. That is that balancing of cortisol and melatonin. And how do we do that? The best thing to do is get 10-15 minutes of direct sunlight within the first 30 minutes of waking up. And people are always like, why do we do that? Yeah, because we're going to shut down melatonin, because that sunlight into our eyes gives our body the signal, oh, it's morning. That light has a certain spectrum and that signals the brain, oh, okay, daytime, time to shut down melatonin, time to increase cortisol, which in the morning we want. We want to have energy and we want to be awake. And
Can I just stop you? I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I myself have like struggled with. It's like, okay, but I live in Canada and we get a lot of dark here. Like it's nighttime. So how are you supposed to get sunlight first thing in the morning?
Well, it's getting better now that we're getting
Yeah.
right where spring now, it's getting better. In the wintertime, I always use one of those light therapy lamps,
Mm-hmm.
though you can buy for like $30 on Amazon.
Yeah.
I sit with that for about 20 minutes. You have it like right next to you. Don't look into the light.
Yeah.
It's very bright.
Mm-hmm.
But you can then read a book or journal or plan your day,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff. As soon as it's getting brighter earlier now, either go outside, like step on your porch with a cup of tea, or go once around the block, or even sit by an open window. If you cannot go outside, don't want to go outside, really open the window and then just sit there for 10-15 minutes. That will help. And that's something I know we need to get over this, like we need to actually do it, but in the end it's free. Right? Like it doesn't cost us anything but 10 to 15 minutes. And it really helps. And if you can repeat that at some point during the day, maybe even 5-10 minutes around the block midday, because your body always needs that light signal to know what time it is. Our body has no clue otherwise what time it is.
Right.
It gets all that information from light. So go outside maybe once after lunch, just 5 minutes around the block's fine. And then if you can, around sunset, because like sunrise, sunset have this red spectrum of light, right? That's where we go sunsets. That is that preferable light that we want. But even if we miss that, it's still a different light than during the day. It's a little more orange and yellow. And that is what we need for the body to know, oh, now it's time to make melatonin. Now we're going to slowly get ready for bed. And that's one of the really big things. The other thing why the bedtime routine starts in the morning is depending on how, and I find that specifically valid for women, depending on what we eat for breakfast, sets our blood sugar and with that, our hormone balance up for the day. And I think you probably agree with me on that because I've seen you share your foods and breakfast. And I personally, if I work with clients, what we look at is we look at a lot of protein in the morning, animal protein preferably. So that could be eggs. It could be eggs and piece of salmon or some chicken, and either with veggies or some fruit, because the more protein we have in the morning, the more stable our blood sugar is, and we have energy to get us to at least lunch. We don't need to snack. We don't drive our blood sugar up and down, because every time our blood sugar drops because we haven't eaten, cortisol rises because we need energy. And if we have an unstable blood sugar during the day, we're also going to have unstable blood sugar during the night. And that can wake you up. If you have a low blood sugar at night, it's a typical between 1 and 3 in the morning wake up. Is your blood sugar dropping so low and your body raises cortisol to say, hello, you're dying, please eat. And then it takes you about an hour and a half to fall back asleep, just because the body needs to degrade, so to say, the cortisol. Like the cortisol levels need to come back down for you to be able to fall asleep, and that just takes 90 minutes. And so getting a really healthy, good protein-laden breakfast in with some healthy fats, some carbs is so important. And what I see a lot, and maybe you see that too, as women, we tend to struggle with weight sometimes, and we want to lose weight. And what do? We start cutting calories, and we start to go for the big salad with the small piece of chicken. And I always try to teach my clients the opposite. Go for the chicken with the little bit of salad, because A, it's easier on your digestion, and B, it really makes your blood sugar stable.
Yes, I love this. People are so afraid to eat meat these days. I feel like that, like everyone's going vegan. Veganism is so, every time I post about on Instagram about meat, like the vegans come at me too.
You know what? And it's funny. I was vegetarian for 15 years and vegan for three years. And that is where my health really went down. My hormones were a disaster. My blood sugar I was eating all the time, because all I was eating as a vegan were nuts and avocado, olives and carbs. They might have been vegetables, but there's lots of grains in that diet too. And I was just constantly hungry. I was never satiated. And I worked with a practitioner, and she's like, I suggest you get the animal protein. And I fought it for 6 months at least. And she was like, you're not really getting better, are you? I'm like, yeah, kind of, not really. She's like, go try it. And then I did, and I was very cautious. I was like, well, I'll try some salmon. I think I can handle that. I had energy like I hadn't had in years.
Yeah.
And it just started balancing everything. And it's a whole different story. And for women, like when we get, as soon as we get in our mid-30s, we're going to start having hormone fluctuations. We might potentially hit perimenopause already. And that balance of blood sugar is huge for our hormones and for our weight, because, right? It's like, and once we have protein, we need to build muscle. We can afford to lose muscle. And we won't, it'd be very difficult to do it on a vegan diet. And some people are different, right? Not everyone's the same. And some people might thrive on a vegan diet, but I think a lot of women, from what I'm seeing, are really struggling. And once we get them to focus on protein and fat and healthy carbs, like your veggies and some fruit, they all do really well, and they get their blood sugar in check, and their weight comes down, and they sleep. And
So when you're talking about like this prioritizing protein, what would that ratio look like on your plate?
I don't really go so much by a ratio. I kind of focus on the protein. So I would say I would aim for 30 grams per meal.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not, that sounds a lot. And if you get into that, that's not nothing. And then do the rest almost as you please, but don't skimp the veggies. I'm always like, protein and produce is what we want. But you have to get your variety of veggies in too, right? We need a healthy gut microbiome, so we need diversity of veggies. And sometimes women are like, oh, but I had to have this big piece of chicken, so now I can't. No, we kind of have to figure that out. And it's a process. And if you haven't eaten that much protein, it takes a little, and it takes maybe a little digestive support, like apple cider vinegar, those bitters, those kinds of things, to get your system to be able to do that. But it actually works, from what I've seen, it works quite well, quite quickly.
So what would you recommend for someone who, and maybe it's these same tips, but they feel like they're getting enough quality sleep, and potentially they're like eating well throughout the day as well, but they still struggle to wake up and don't feel fully rested in the morning? Could there be further things going on, or what would you? Okay, I'm asking this selfishly because
tell me your case.
That's why it's like such a specific question. No, my husband and I, we eat really healthy, and we sleep between 7 and 8 hours a night. And I am knowledgeable about a lot of these things as well. And yet I've still sometimes struggle to wake up, particularly like I don't want to wake up when the alarm clock goes off. And well, I mean, maybe I shouldn't be using an alarm clock. That might be one thing, but
well, we have to, right? That's the thing. In the ideal world, we would we would live like the people lived millions of years ago in caves with fire, and we would go to bed when the sun goes down, and we would rise with the sun, and that's what we would do. And if you go camping, is a perfect way to reset your circadian rhythm. And people sleep really well when they're camping, and that's not just the fresh air; it's also the light exposure. But I would look into, if you cannot get up with the alarm, can you go to sleep a little earlier?
No.
Because no.
Not with my daughter, no.
Okay.
We go to sleep like right after her as it is. So
okay.
I love that you're like coaching me right now.
Well, that's one thing you could see, right? And if people are like, oh, you know what? I know I go to bed too late and I want to go to bed earlier. If you normally go to bed at 11, do not go to bed at 10. You're not going to fall asleep.
Right.
You're going to be laying there. Go to bed in like 15, 20-minute intervals earlier, so your body can slowly adjust to that.
We actually did that when we were like adjusting our sleep and to get up like when we needed to get up. But yeah, we did that ourselves. But now we sleep like basically as much as we can, with a little bit of time before my daughter wakes up, because we really need that downtime first. But
you do. And the one thing you can try is really that light exposure in the morning, just because it helps reset your circadian rhythm. And once the body knows that, it might adjust its sleep throughout the night. But do you feel that you sleep through the night, or do you wake up a lot, or do you wake up and can't fall back asleep?
Myself, I'm a very good sleeper. I sleep like the dead.
Well, that's great.
And I fall asleep very quickly as well. So
yeah, I think light exposure is the biggest one. Yeah. There's always a discussion if somebody says I'm sleeping 7 to 8 hours and I'm still like I'm dragging my feet around next day. It's the quality. Then it could be the quality of the sleep. Are they getting enough deep sleep? For that, for me, it's first of all things like, did they de-stress enough at some point during the day? Did they? What we sometimes suggest is things like, do you do a brain dump? Do you just journal out everything that's on your mind? Did you do something you enjoyed that gave you joy that day? Did you actually have something nice that you wanted to do? Did you exercise? And by exercise, I don't mean everybody has to run to the gym every day, but did you go around a block for a brisk walk? Did you sit at your desk all day? Did you build enough sleep pressure? That's what we call sleep, that you're actually tired enough to really sleep and really have a good night's rest. So those are things you can look at. But the biggest difference is going to be probably light exposure. Yeah, I would say is the biggest one.
Okay, awesome. What myths have you heard about sleep that you could debunk?
That alcohol helps with sleep.
That's a good one. Yeah,
that's a good one. That comes a lot with women, actually, because women say, you know what, I need my glass of red wine when the kids are in bed on the couch with my Netflix show to unwind and like decompress from the day. And actually, it's been shown in studies, alcohol does make women fall asleep faster. But it really messes with the quality of sleep. And when you wake up in the morning, you're groggy, which is not in most cases the hangover from the alcohol, because one glass of wine, if your liver is doing okay, you should be able to metabolize. Yeah. But it just doesn't remove enough sleep pressure from the body. And that's why you're still tired in the morning. And then you go and grab the coffee, which is understandable. And then you go and grab the carbs, because that is also all linked, right? And then we just have this vicious cycle that we create for ourselves that we can't get out of. So alcohol is actually not helping with sleep. Yeah. The other one that I hear a lot is, if I can't sleep at night, I should not nap. I would disagree with that. If you take something that like a power nap, so 10 to 20 minute nap before 2 p.m., with an alarm, so you don't actually get into a full sleep cycle and deep sleep, but you just stay in a light sleep phase, that's totally fine. It's actually even less restful than meditating. So if somebody instead wanted to put in a YouTube meditation in their headphones and just listen to that while laying down for 20 minutes, awesome. We'll have similar and will help with sleep at night. But napping really isn't that big of a problem if it's done right. Catching up on sleep on the weekend? No. Because our bodies, because of the sleep-wake cycle, we are just cyclic human beings. And I think for women, this is even more obvious than for men, because we have a monthly cycle and we have our sleep-wake cycle. We have a bajillion cycles. And our bodies like consistency and routine, so they know what the cycle is and they know when to produce hormones, enzymes, digestion going, whatnot. And if we mess with that by going to bed late, maybe during the week to get a lot of stuff done, and then potentially go to bed earlier on the weekend or sleep in, that messes with that cycle. And the body does not recover well with this. And then you come Monday and then everybody at work is like, oh my God, what a weekend. That night was, no, it's because we haven't been consistent. Like our sleep schedule should be roughly the same every night, Monday to Sunday. Right. And we can't really catch up, because if you're missing, like let's say you're cutting short 2 hours every night, Monday to Friday, that's 10 hours of sleep debt, what we call sleep debt. Saturday, Sunday, you're not going to make up 10 hours. So you're sleeping 8 plus 5. Likely not going to happen.
Yeah, totally. And so what about like a late night out on a Friday night? A lot of people, will go.
Yeah.
Does that affect?
Does it affect the quality of your sleep? For sure. Do we want to live? For sure. So should we go on a Friday? Yeah. Because right, it's just if somebody really struggles, getting that consistency for a while until that struggle is gone is very important. And then you can go back to try here and there and see what. But we were talking before we hit record, right? Like some of our clients sleep 2 to 4 hours a night for over decades. Yeah. And if we let them go party every Friday, we're not going to get this under control. Yeah. So they need to reestablish that rhythm. And then they can start doing that again. Yeah. But everybody who really struggles with like this consistency is generally really important. And can you play with half an hour? Yeah, you can play with half an hour. But really doing this, I'm going to bed at 11:30 tonight, and tomorrow then I'm going to catch up and do 9:30, and then the next night I'm going to go 10:30. Oh no, and then there's that show that I need to watch, so it's going to be 11. That's not really a great idea in general for the body.
Yeah. What about, I just thought of something else. What about eating before bed? What's your recommendations for that?
The general recommendation is don't eat a heavy meal 3 hours before you go to bed. And by that, I mean, like if you have a really big dinner, lots of fat, lots of like that, really, we want digestion to be done kind of when we go to bed. So the body doesn't need to use that energy, and that activity, because that releases cortisol. Digestion releases histamine, that releases cortisol, and then that can wake us up. Also, it drains your quality of sleep because it just takes energy. But there are a few people who do very well with a small snack half an hour or an hour before bed. And those are the people who have struggles with blood sugar balance. Or if you don't eat enough during the day, that causes blood sugar imbalance, but for whatever reason, you were super stressed and there was nothing there and you just kept going. Those people normally do well with maybe like a small handful of nuts, or some people do well with banana, even though it technically really spikes blood sugar. But for some people, if the blood sugar is really low, it works. Something really small, if you're somebody who can handle dairy and can have a small piece of cheese, those kinds of things can work. Pistachios have melatonin. Tart cherries have melatonin. So tart cherry juice, just a shot of that kind of thing, might also help to just stabilize you through the night. That's something that's a bit of a trial and error. But what I see a lot with, like, a lot of people talk about intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, personally, from experience with the female clients that I work with, I would say for a lot of women, premenopausal is not such a great idea. And by that, I mean, if you're doing like a 16-8 where you eat for 8 hours and then you don't eat anything for 16, that is very stressful on the body. And that is by intent, but stress releases cortisol. And if you're not sleeping, I would say, as a sleep coach, I'd say don't do that because you're stressing your body too much. Have a what I call time restricted eating. So I would leave my 12, 13 hours in between meals. We don't want to constantly snack. We want to eat so we're satiated. But if you're somebody who needs to have that little snack before dinner, after dinner, before bed, because we want to get you through the night, then that's fine. And we see a lot of people who are like, like sometimes biohackers were like, oh yeah, I'm all about intermittent fasting. And then they contact you and are like, you know what? I'm not sleeping. You know what? Start eating dinner. And then they eat something and they're like, I slept through the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. And depending on what stage you're at with your health, also, it might not be what actually supports your sleep at that point.
And does it go for the same for children? Because I'm just thinking when you're talking about my daughter and like she goes to bed, there's not 3 hours between supper and and bedtime for her. Is it the same for kids?
No, it's not really. And also kids have stronger digestive systems than adults do. And so they can normally handle that a lot better. If you feed them something crazy heavy at night, will you see that they might have trouble falling asleep? That it might take them a little longer? Yeah. You'll notice that. But if you have like a well-balanced, lighter dinner, they should be fine, even if it's an hour and a half before. And some kids, like for a long time, at least with our son, we did it probably till he was 5, 6. He would have an after dinner snack. If we had dinner like 5:36, he would at 7:30 before going to bed, he would have something small. He wanted it and he got it and he slept really well with it. Yeah. Which is, I think they know, like when they're using up the energy and that it's not good for their sleep because their blood sugar tanks. And we know what happens when kids' blood sugar tanks, the same as ours, right? Everybody gets cranky. Yeah. So no, they can have that. You don't need to wait 3 hours to send them to bed.
Okay. So if my audience could take one thing away from today's episode, what would you say is most important when it comes to sleep?
That your bedtime routine begins in the morning and that you should expose yourself to sunlight for 10 minutes within the first 30 minutes of waking up. It is a game changer for your sleep, for your energy, for your mood. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for everything that you shared with us today. Where can people find you if they'd like to connect?
They can either find me on Instagram, which is @_Annika Carroll, or they could find me at sleepmasterymethod.com, which is my sleep program.
Okay, awesome. And I will put all your links in the show notes as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, that's that. I hope you learned so much in this episode about sleep and you can take something away from it and start implementing it so that you get better sleep, so that you better your health, to help with your weight loss journey, whatever your goals are. Sleep is super important. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode and I will talk to you next week.